Okay, hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see old friends and new friends. Great to be in this beautiful venue and in this beautiful city. Arrived yesterday morning. I think I met about 2,000 people since. So making good use of the time, I guess. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Israeli innovation ecosystem. And the good news is that a lot of it has already been covered by the previous speakers, so that will give us more time to focus on some other things that we've done. So you already know that, I'm sure, about the ecosystem built in Israel and about the fact that in this specific sport, unlike most other sports, we are on the medal podium. And Israel is a leading country with regards to our ecosystem with a sophisticated financing market, a great academic research, a vibrant industry, and of course a supporting government, which I will talk. And again, Alan covered that. So we can go immediately to the economic impact. Now, we'll get to the 10% of the employees in a minute, but let me focus on the fact that 50% of our industrial exports are high-tech. What it means, in short, is that this is strategic. It matters. We don't need to convince our government leader or our public about the importance and strategic nature of the high-tech industry as such to the Israeli economy. Many countries today, and everywhere I go, not only in conferences focused on innovation, but I would say any economic conference today realizes how much investing in research and development, entrepreneurship, small businesses, and so on contributes to the economy. The magic of transforming innovation, intellectual property, into products that impact our lives as consumers, that generate economic benefits, is something that government doesn't know how to do. And I want to establish that right off. This is something the private sector has to do. But government can actually help in a whole lot of things. And the first thing I think we've done just about right, at least with regards to the Office of the Chief Scientist, is going beyond that dichotomy of market-driven, state-driven, what's your political belief, what's your religion, what you should do, understanding that it's all about public-private partnership, that by working together, you can actually push the economic ecosystem. And the secret is actually realizing what's your job and what's not. What does government do better than the private sector and what it does not? So for example, we don't think we can forecast better than you, the cumulative view, what's the next big thing? What's the sector of the future? How to build companies? We don't know how to do that. Certainly not better than any one of you, and definitely not better than the entire market. But there are some things that government either is the only player that can do or has an inherent advantage. And I won't focus on all of these. Infrastructure is an easy one to understand. I'm sure you will all agree. It includes human capital. It includes R&D infrastructure. It includes the right tax environment and the right IP regime. It includes also national infrastructure, like the National Biobank, Tissue Bank. We help build in Israel, and so on. But the one that is a little bit counterintuitive, yet it drives our policy for the last 4 decades, is the whole notion and risk. And I would claim to you that government has a much better ability to handle risk than the private sector, and hence should be much more risk lover than the private entrepreneur or investor. Now, I know taxpayer money and high risk doesn't go well together, but the reason is very simple to understand. Unlike the venture capitalist, who, in the case of a failing company, has lost all his money and is not happy, the government sometimes sees great financial returns from a failing company. And we have many examples in Israel where, under a failing company, based on the know-how, the intellectual property, the talent, the lessons learned, emerge 4 and sometimes 40 new startup companies. So as a government, this makes that failing company an amazing investment. It yielded very positive spillover impact. It created a lot of benefit to the ecosystem. It means that we can and should take more risk, which is exactly what we do within the Office of the Chief Scientist. So the model in Israel is highly concentrated. The office actually does both R&D funding and innovation policies. As such, thousands of companies every year enjoy our R&D grants in different stages of their innovation. But we also have the responsibility of designing and executing the innovation policy, looking at the ecosystem, seeing where are the gaps, what are the missing infrastructure, what needs to be done in order to push the ecosystem forward. The office is in charge of all sectors: communication, life science, energy, every company that presented here and more. Also traditional industries like food and plastic, agriculture, and so on. And also all the stages of innovation. In this case, we focus on the life of companies. We'll get to academia in a minute. But certainly either you're a single entrepreneur just thinking about your new startups, all the way to the largest Israeli or multinational company, there are funding schemes available to support your effort in R&D and innovation. I would claim, and I say that on any stage I go up and in every meeting I see, that the most important word in the world of innovation is collaboration. And it's been a main theme in all our programs, schemes, and frameworks from the beginning till this day. Because regardless of whether you're a single entrepreneur or a business firm, a university, or a country, you're not going to be successful by creating all the assets and capabilities within the walls of your organization. You're going to be successful by collaborating with innovation which resides outside your organization. Now, everybody understands that, but let's face it, this is really tough. It's very, very tough to collaborate, certainly when it comes to R&D. The point is that in 2015, this is no longer a discussion. There is no other way to innovate but to create those bridges, which is exactly why a lot of our frameworks are around matchmaking, interconnecting. Part of the Israeli strength in terms of our ecosystem is that ongoing communication between the different partners. These are not silos. They not necessarily agree on anything, but there's high level of interaction between the different players of the ecosystem, industry and academia, Israeli companies and foreign companies. And my office invests a lot in bringing those partners together, and then, of course, paying for lunch or sometimes the R&D projects, which is helpful a lot. Now, over the years, this is not just economic theory. Okay, this is something that actually working. You can imagine a virtual machine in which you put $1 on one side, and you get $5, sometimes 10 on the other. That would be nice. I'm sure each and every one of you would love to have such a machine. But we actually have that machine. It's called the Office of the Chief Scientist. And this is not theory. This is based on real data analysis, not done by us, revalidated over and over again, showing that investing in R&D actually yields, in terms of GDP contribution, in terms of pushing the economy, a great return. As I've said, we benefit not only from the successes, also from the failure. As such, this is a great contribution. And not many people know the fact, I mean, you've all seen that Israel is the leader in R&D investment as a percentage of our GDP. But the government's share of that investment is actually the lowest of all OECD countries. It's extremely low. And what you realize is that you don't necessarily need to be investing the lion's share of the money if you take the lion's share of the risk. And if you focus your investments in the right place, industry will reply. You will extend the R&D envelope. You will create additionality. More dollars would have been invested that without the government grant wouldn't have happened. And that's the key of the policy. How do you do right? We don't want to replace the venture capitals. We want to leave the upside for the entrepreneurs, the innovators, and the investors. But we want to make them do the things which are longer term and high risk and capital intensive. And those are not things that will be done by themselves. So we talked about international collaboration. And as I've said, this is a must today. And we've invested a lot in that over the years, more and more with places in Asia. And in recent years, we've seen a boom of companies from this continent learning about Israel, interacting with Israel, investing in Israel, building R&D centers, and so on. As such, I believe this is not just a big market opportunity in terms of the target market, but also a great source of innovation. And Australia, of course, besides the bilateral nature of the relationship, can also serve as a good gateway for some of these countries. Hence, a large opportunity that I think we can all talk about. I want to spend the next few minutes not talking about what we've achieved, because again, you've heard about it, but share with you some of the challenges in our roadmap when we look 20 years into the future. Because, as government, we should not only look about the next quarter, but actually think in a decade or two future. Now, the past 20 years, it sounds very easy when we talk about it. It wasn't easy, I can tell you. I was a customer of the chief scientist. But the last 4 decades, even 20 years, were all about creation. This ecosystem needed to be created because 25 years ago, there was no VC industry in Israel. There were almost no R&D centers, very little international collaboration. Our R&D investment as a percentage of GDP was just about 2% or so. This all needs to be created, but this we've done. The next 20 years are going to be about scale up, about increasing the economic impact. And the missions as we see today, on the one hand, is keeping that leading position. That becomes very hard, because this gentleman sitting right here is going to give us a hard time and creating the same mechanism or better ones to create the same knowledge economy in Australia. And Australia is not an exception. Everywhere, east and west, developing and developed world, this type of focus is starting to materialize. So we need to run very, very fast just to stay in the same place. And hence our mission, to remain on the innovation peak. But in the same time, and with the same level of importance, we have the mission of pulling up the rest of the economy. And Chemi spoke about that from the impact investment point of view. But from our perspective, it's completely economic. This is very simple. 10% of the workforce, if we want to maintain the growth and leadership, we need to engage more sectors. We need to engage more people in the game of technological innovation. So when we look at the Office of the Chief Scientist's role in the next 20 years, some of the missions are traditional missions. We've been doing them and we'll keep doing them. And stability, by the way, matters. Keeping a consistent policy, regardless of government changes, regardless of changes in priority, matters because it signals to the players, both domestic and international, that this is real, that this is strategic. But at the same time, you need to adjust your programs and you need to adjust your settings to the environment changes. Hence, next 20 years, we'll be doing more and more efforts to ignite innovation in traditional industries, like food, like plastics, like agriculture, bringing methodological R&D to the services sector, which is not used to doing that, to the government itself, which again is an important player. Bringing in sectors which are underrepresented in the high-tech game, like the Arab minority, like the ultra-Orthodox men, and we have ongoing efforts to do that. And again, the driver is not political or moral or ethical, even though all of these are important and matter. It's an economic driver. We have to do it because human capital drives this industry forward. And if we want to look at the years ahead, these are some of the challenges we'll have to do it. So we need to be more customer focused. And we need to have tools and structure that will match each of the challenges. By focusing and having a coherent view on what the customer needs, this is where the best ideas come from. They don't come from sitting down in committees. They come from monitoring and listening to what companies and researchers and innovators and investors need, coming to realize what we can do best and how to fit those. And this is the structure we go about. Identification is the first part. And by the way, if you didn't identify a specific need, I would claim to you, do no harm. There's no need to invent something which is not needed by itself. And of course, execution in an efficiently and timely manner. That sounds like a challenge for all of you guys. In government, this is almost impossible. But this is the sort of standards we need to keep up because the pace of change is accelerating exponentially. And you're all experiencing that. And it cannot take years for a government to design its policies and execute it because the problem will move somewhere else or your company will long be dead. This is the challenge we have to come up to. So this is how we look at the world again, is maintaining the good things that we have, the public-private partnership, our main pillars of policy, the things that have worked well for us in the years. But we want to move ahead and create an entity that is smarter, that is more innovative, that is experimental, that has the capability, which is almost impossible for a bureaucracy, to start a program and then realize it's the wrong program and, God forbid, shut it down. Okay? This is also something which each and every one of you does on a daily basis. Not because you thought it's a great product, turned out not to be a great product. You cut, fail quickly, right? That's what they taught us. This is what we want to do as well. As such, we've passed a major legislation, and this is really a major reform of creating a national authority for technological innovation that will basically transform the Office of the Chief Scientist to a new statutory entity which will give us exactly these benefits, being more flexible, having a bigger arsenal or toolkit, maintaining the good things about the policy and our DNA, but really taking us to the challenges of the next decade with more interaction from the other players as such. So our time is up, so I want to end up with this message, ladies and gentlemen, because really I think it's all about the attitude. And what makes Israel special is this attitude of the people mostly the entrepreneurs, who don't just wait for things to happen to them. They go out there and they happen to think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Avi. Will you stay on stage?
Oh, sure.
So you'll see.